Welcome to the deep dive. Today, you've brought us this really complex stack of material. It's about a highly sophisticated, ancient biological warfare incident.
Yeah, ancient is the word. And it nearly spread across the entire Federation. It's quite the story.
So our mission today is to quickly unpack this thing. The nature of the threat, how it got onto a major starship, spread like wildfire.
And the countermeasures, which were pretty desperate, but also, frankly, ingenious.
Okay, so where do we start? You mentioned this is more than just biological, it's psychological too.
Absolutely. This investigation really hits two core points. First, the incredibly traumatic backstory of a Vulcan scientist, Master Scientist Skel. Highly respected, but carrying a lot.
Okay.
And second, the just terrifying properties of these alien artifacts he was carrying. We're looking at a scenario where a subatomic weapon basically weaponized deep psychological trauma.
Weaponized trauma. Wow.
Right.
That almost sounds metaphorical, but it was literal here.
Painfully literal. It almost led to galactic catastrophe.
Okay, let's dig into this. The sources trace the origin back, way back, 80 years, to Vulcan, to these alien artifacts.
Right. And they weren't what you'd expect. Not menacing tech. The descriptions say they were beautiful, like shell-like things resembling Terran clams.
Clamshells containing a weapon. That's unsettling.
It's the ultimate disguise, isn't it? But inside these beautiful shells, a uniquely advanced form of germ warfare, containing what the files call subatomic entities.
Yep, subatomic, so not a virus, not bacteria.
Yeah.
Something much smaller.
Exactly. Operating at a particle level, completely undetectable by standard methods. And the only inscription they could read on these things, chillingly simple, for war alone.
For war alone, okay. And the connection to this scientist, Skel?
He's the key. Master Scientist Skel was the initial carrier. He actually survived the original Vulcan epidemic these artifacts caused 80 years prior. He was just a kid, maybe 10 years old.
So he encountered them as a child.
Yes. And the entities didn't just die off inside him. They mutated, adapted. He lived with them inside him for 80 years. Totally asymptomatic. He had no idea he was essentially a walking bioweapon incubator.
80 years, wow. But what kept them dormant, or rather contained within him for so long? And you mentioned his trauma.
Ah, yes. That's the crux of it. Those 80 years of incubation, they were directly fueled by this unspeakable childhood horror. During that original outbreak, Skel saw his own father, described as gentle, logical, get infected.
Oh, no.
Yeah, the father went mad, possessed, and murdered Skel's mother, Tereth, with a lurpa, that ancient Vulcan ceremonial weapon. Brutal.
I can't even imagine a child witnessing that.
And it gets worse, in a way. Tereth's final act, as she was dying, she did something apparently unprecedented. She transferred her consciousness, her living essence.
Her soul, basically.
Right, into young Skel's mind, without physical contact, which shouldn't be possible, but she did it. An act of love, trying to save something of herself and maybe warn him.
But it became a burden for him.
A terrible one. It wasn't a comforting presence. It manifested as this constant, terrifying psychic scream in his nightmares, just repeating, run, run, run. Raw terror, grief, emotion.
So wait, are you saying that psychic trauma, that constant emotional signal?
That's exactly it. According to the analysis, that intense, sustained emotional energy, that fear from the katra, it served as a power source. It fed the subatomic entities inside him for decades, kept them alive, let them evolve.
That's a horrific irony. The mother's attempt to save or warn him inadvertently sustained the weapon that killed her.
Precisely. A horrifying feedback loop. And it meant that when the entities did finally find a way to spread, they were perfectly primed.
Okay, so let's talk about the outbreak on the starship. How did it spread if standard biofilters couldn't catch these subatomic things?
Because they're subatomic, they just pass right through the filters. Undetectable. The primary transmission vectors were direct eye contact, even minor physical contact, or a weak neural link. Basically, proximity and interaction.
And the effect?
Yeah.
Instantaneous.
Pretty much. Madness. Extreme, uncontrollable violence. But here's a crucial diagnostic clue they found later. People who were possessed and then cured showed specific brain damage. A very distinct starburst pattern, they called it.
Starburst pattern? Where?
In the frontal lobes and the amygdala. Key areas for inhibition, memory, emotion. It showed the entities weren't just making people sick, they were hijacking the brain's core functions.
Targeting the mind directly, so the violence wasn't random.
Not at all. It seems calculated. Driven by the entity's need to survive, which, as we establish, relies on intense emotion.
Right, the feeding mechanism. And they had a bigger plan, didn't they? Skel wasn't acting alone once he was activated.
No. He was fully under their control by them, and he teamed up with another infected scientist on board, a Dr. Tarmid. And the irony here is thick. Tarmid was the inventor of the visor technology.
The device Geordie LaForge uses? The one that lets him see energy wavelengths.
The very same. And yeah, that becomes important later. Their plan was to use the upcoming Universal Techno Fair. Huge event, packed with scientists from everywhere.
Oh, I see where this is going.
Yeah, a perfect spreading event. In fact, the top scientific minds from, quote, almost every spacefaring race. It was. Well, it was an extinction-level plan disguised as a conference.
Terrifying. And it all comes back to feeding on emotion.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Fear, rage, adrenaline, that's their fuel. They needed the hosts to cause chaos, to generate that emotional energy, just to maintain their own strength and ability to infect others. It's less biological warfare, more psychological parasitism.
The sources mention in Ensign Evans as an example of this.
Yes, a chilling example. She was infected, murdered a colleague. When she was being pursued by Dr. Daniel Finke, another key figure we'll get to, Evans didn't just try to escape.
What did she do?
She deliberately allowed herself to get injured, badly. Broken nose, injured groin, endured intense pain. Why? To generate that huge spike of adrenaline and fear, she was consciously feeding the starving entities, as the report puts it, sacrificing her body for them.
The hosts were complicit in their own suffering, essentially fueling the infection.
To a horrifying degree. Which brings us to their prime target, Counselor Troi.
The ship's empath. A betazoid.
Perfect target. As an empath, her emotional output is immense. They saw her as a long-term power source. The plan wasn't to kill her quickly, it was to keep her alive, terrified, in constant agony.
To harvest her emotions.
Exactly. Like a psychic battery, constantly feeding the collective entity from a distance. Sustained, agonizing terror as fuel.
This is just profoundly disturbing. But the story shifts here, right? There was resistance.
Yes, thankfully. Despite how fast it spread, maybe up to 25% of the crew got infected, including senior staff like Commander Riker, Dr. Crusher.
Crusher and Riker, too. Wow.
Oh, yeah. It went right to the top. But a small group remained uninfected. They became the core of the resistance.
Who were they?
An unlikely bunch. Data, the android immune, obviously no emotions for them to feed on. He was like a diagnostic trap for them. Dr. Kyla Daniel killed the eye specialist.
The one pursuing Ensign Evans.
That's her. And Worf's son, young Alexander, who actually helped out. And then there was Lieutenant Worf himself.
Worf. Okay, this is fascinating. The sources say he had a unique immunity. How does a Klingon warrior's mindset stop subatomic entities?
It's a fantastic twist, isn't it?
Yeah.
He was exposed, they got inside him, but he became an immune carrier. They couldn't take hold, couldn't spread from him.
Why not?
Well, think about Worf. He's defined by this immense, tightly controlled inner turmoil, fierce Klingon emotion, warrior discipline, constantly suppressed. He internalizes it.
Right. He doesn't usually lash out emotionally, he contains it.
Exactly. And these entities thrive on externalized chaos and fear. Worf's powerful, contained intensity. It essentially scarved them. They were trapped inside him, unable to feed off released emotion. His own willpower became their prison.
A starvation chamber, that's incredible. And his willingness to sacrifice himself proved he wasn't infected.
Yeah, Data noted that. The possessed were incapable of selfless acts. They were driven solely by the entity's need. Worf's readiness for self-sacrifice confirmed his mind was still his own.
Okay, so they have an immune Klingon, but they still can't see the enemy to fight it effectively. How did they solve that?
That's where Dr. Danelki and Data come in. Danelki, by the way, wasn't just an eye doctor. The files note she had 2 black belts. Probably helped her survive the initial chaos.
Handy skills to have during an outbreak of violent madness.
You'd think so. Anyway, she and Data spearheaded the diagnostic breakthrough. They realized standard bioscans were useless. But then they thought about Tarmud's invention.
The visor. The infected scientist's own creation.
The irony, right? They figured out Geordie's visor, designed to see energy wavelengths beyond human sight, could potentially be adapted. They reverse engineered
And
it.
it worked. They could see the entities.
It worked. They managed to tune it, to visualize the entity's specific energy frequencies, their wave patterns. Suddenly, the invisible enemy was visible.
That's the turning point. Now they can detect it. They can start thinking about a cure.
Precisely. Data could start working on the purge sequence. But they had a huge problem. How do you round up potentially hundreds of violent infected crew members safely?
You can't just send Worf and Daniel after all of them.
No way. They needed a lure. And they turned to their primary target.
Counselor Troi, they used her as bait. That sounds incredibly dangerous for her.
Extremely. But she volunteered. And here's another twist involving Skel's trauma. Troi was coached mentally, not by her Betazoid training, but by Treth's katra.
The mother's consciousness still inside Skel. How?
Somehow, maybe through proximity or the shared psychic environment the entities created, Treth's presence was able to reach Troi. That constant psychic scream of "run in" was momentarily repurposed. It gave Troi a kind of Vulcan discipline, the records say. Focus.
Wow, so Treth helped, even after everything.
In a way, yes. Troi then put herself through unimaginable agony. She deliberately broadcast intense, focused fear and despair, a massive psychic beacon.
An emotional feast they couldn't resist.
Exactly. The sources say the possessed were helplessly forced to endure her touch, meaning they were drawn to that powerful emotional signal like moths to a flame. They swarmed towards her location,
Which is what?
the main cargo bay. Big open space. As they converged, the resistance team, Worf, Denelk, Data, Alexander were ready. They used portable force field emitters, the kind used for containing cargo.
Clever.
Yeah, they trapped dozens of the possessed crew members inside these force field bubbles, contained them safely, sparing Troi further direct contact and protecting the team.
Okay, threat contained, now for the cure.
Right. With the infected secured, Data initiated his ship-wide cure sequence. It involved releasing a targeted anesthetic gas combined with some kind of accelerator particle designed specifically to disrupt the entity's hold on the nervous system.
And it worked. Did people recover fully?
It purged the entities effectively. The main side effect seems to have been total memory loss of the time they were possessed, which maybe was a blessing for some. And it showed the Scale Dr. Crusher, fully possessed, actually tried to sabotage the cure distribution.
Even Crusher. Okay, so the crew is saved. What about the entities themselves and the artifacts?
That led to the final command decision. Captain Picard arrived on the scene. The Vulcans sent a ship, the Skull Tor, offering to take the artifacts, maybe study the contained entities.
But Picard refused.
He did. Prioritized Federation safety above all else. He wasn't taking any chances letting this weapon exist, even contained. He ordered Data to destroy the entities.
How? Can you even destroy subatomic things easily?
Data used a specialized transporter pattern. The idea, the hypothesis anyway, was to beam them out into space, but use a dispersal pattern that would break their fundamental bonding frequency, disrupt the collective consciousness that made them a weapon.
Reduce them back to whatever they were individually before being weaponized.
Back to their harmless individual state, is how the report puts it. So hopefully neutralized for good.
A neat solution. And what about Skel, the original source of it all?
With the entities finally purged from his mind after 80 long years, that constant psychic interference from the katra was gone. A Vulcan healer named T-Sun was able to perform a mind meld.
To finally separate him from his mother's consciousness?
Yes. She successfully separated Tireth's katra from Skel's mind. After 80 years trapped in that traumatic echo chamber, Tireth's consciousness was released, sent to the Vulcan Hall of Ancient Thought. And Skel, well, he finally found peace.
What a story. So connecting it all back, the big picture here seems to be about how deeply psychology and trauma played into this physical threat.
Absolutely. You had this ancient, sophisticated weapon, yes. But its success hinged entirely on exploiting a decades-old untreated wound. A single point of failure in containment, amplified by immense personal suffering.
And the defense wasn't just tech, was it? It was about understanding that emotional component.
Exactly. The entities fed on chaos and fear. So the defense relied on, well, unique forms of emotional control and endurance.
Like Troy's focused agony, Worf's internalized containment.
And Data's pure logic, unaffected by it all, finding the technical solution. It took all three.
So the takeaway for you, listening to this, what does it all mean? The sources really emphasize Kureth's final act, transferring her katra without touch, something seemingly impossible.
An act of love or desperate will that defied known physics. And ultimately, though it caused Skel's immense pain, her presence was eventually instrumental in Troi's resistance.
It raises a pretty big question, doesn't it? In these moments of absolute crisis, when you're facing something designed purely for war alone, are deepest connections, our emotional bonds, maybe even love itself, actually more powerful defenses than we realize? Something to think about.